Okay, let's discuss about another knowledge object which is there in a Splunk, and that is workflow actions. So we are going to discuss about workflow actions today. And workflow actions, in summary, it allows us to create links within the events. The events what you see after running the Splunk search query, right? So uh, in those events, you can create the workflow actions, and those events can interact with either with the external resources, or they can run a secondary search in your Splunk environment itself. So it can either use HTTP post or GET method to interact with the external sources, or you can set up to use Splunk search method only to run a secondary search. So we'll we'll see all three options. We'll see all three methods that we can use to set up the workflow actions in the events. So to start with, if you see this data, here we have this IP address, and I've already extracted this field IP. So now to create the workflow actions, for now, if you go to event actions, there is no event workflow action that has been created for these events, right? So to set up the one, you just need to go to settings, fields, and here you see an option of workflow actions. So just click on that and new workflow action. So while setting up the workflow action, Splunk provides you with two options, either the link or the search. If you select the link, it's going to use either post or get HTTP method. See, so if you are selecting link here, it's populating just two options here, get or post. If you're selecting search method here, it will just give you an option to run the secondary search in your Splunk environment. Okay, so we'll start with the get HTTP method. Let's create the new workflow action, and we are going to set up it on search app. Test workflow action. Sorry, this would be the label actually. Name test workflow. Okay, and then it asks whether you want to apply it to all the fields or just any specific field or fields. So I'm leaving it blank. Want to apply it to all the fields, and I want it to show it against the fields as well as in the event actions menu. Action type, I'm going to keep it link because I want to call. So for example, just to test it, I want to just set up this external link, google.com, and I want it to open it in a new window. The method I'm going to use get. Okay, let's save it. So now if you run any search here, and if you go to event actions, you can see that workflow action here, right? And if you click on this, it will redirect you to the google.com because that's what we have configured there. Okay, so now let's do some realistic configuration. Just close this, create a new workflow action. Okay, if you've seen in the data, okay, so there is a field called IP, right? So, I mean, in an industry, you may have a network engineer or your security team who, if you see all these events, you can see that the login was failed, right? So you may suspect the some kind of threats, someone trying to attack your system, trying to get into that. So your network engineer might want to know the uh, uh, more details about the IP address who are trying to hit the system, right? So for this demo, Let's try to find out more details about these IPs, and this field I have already extracted in IP. So to configure that, let's make IP finder. More details about, and we want to know more about IP field, right? So that should pass as an argument to the external search. I want to apply it to just IP field, so I'll give it IP. I want to apply it to all the event types. I want to display it in both the places, event menu actions as well as against the field. And the action type, I'm going to select link only, URL. So I want this time my request should redirect to this whoisdomaintools.com. If you need to look out for the details for this IP now, you just need to copy and paste it there, right? So we'll have to paste it here. And then it populates the metadata about that IP, the location and other details. And it's taking the IP as an argument here, right? If you see. So instead of passing that IP here, I will just use this fields enclosing in the $sign so that it takes IP as an input. I want to open it in a new window. A method I'm going to use get because I'm just looking out for the information of this IP. And it will display as a more details about IP. So whatever IP in that event. Okay, so now if you refresh this page, and if you go to this, you can see this more details about the IP, whatever IP is there in that event. So here it's 2.229.4.58. Let's see if any other IP are. Here it's 163. So you can see, and if you click on this, it will take you to the external resource, whatever you have configured while setting up the workflow action, right? So it's passing that IP as an input here, and they can know more about this, the details about this IP address. So this is how you can set up you can use whois lookup to find out the details about the IP address, or you can set up the custom links there, maybe for your run books. So you can just set up the workflow action and you can pass on the link of your run book related to the events. So user can just click on that and it takes to the run book, right? So that's very useful function, I would say. Now to set up another workflow action. Okay, so that's about get, and using post method, you can pass on arguments. For example, if you want to create a bug ticket, or if you want to pass some arguments, while maybe your development team has given you an API and they want you to call that API by passing some arguments, right? So for that, you can use the post method. You can pass the arguments, and based on the API you are hitting, it will just uh, take the action there. If you are doing it for creating the bug on the external system, it will do that. So in this example, instead of, so that's about get and post method. Let's see another method, search method, which let you run the secondary Splunk search. So I'm giving the name as Splunk secondary search. Okay, so before I create this, let me just tell you the context, what I'm trying to achieve now. Okay, so for now, if you see for this IP, the login has failed, right? And if you just take this IP and see how many times this customer has tried to hit the system, it's showing 57 events. So instead of copying the IP and manually checking, I want to create the workflow action to see all events for this, and then for IP, right? IP field I'm going to use. So I want to apply it to IP field only. to all the event types. I want to display it against both against fields as well as in event menu actions. Action type this time, I'm not going to use any link, external link there, right? I'm just going to run the search there. And I'm just going to run this search. So you can pass your search there. As an input, I want to pass the IP, uh, putting it inside the dollar signs, right? So IP should pass in as a conditional keyword here for this Splunk search. Run in app, I want to run it in search app only in a same view where my parent search is running. And I want to open it in a new window. Earliest, latest, you can define or you can use the same time range as your parent search. So I'm leaving it blank. It should take the same time what's there for the parent search. Okay, so now if you save it, if you go here, one second, Splunk secondary search to apply to IP field, both events for this IP, okay? Okay, let's go to fields and see if you see that action. More details test workflow action. Okay, it's not showing that. Let me just troubleshoot it quickly. Secondary search all events for this, and then the IP should take as an input. Apply only to the following fields. IP should show in both action type search. Search string this. Okay, I didn't define any time here, right? So I think that's the problem. It wasn't picking up that workflow action. Okay, let's rerun it and see if we see that workflow action now. Okay, so now you can see that it's giving that and the newly created workflow action option here, right? So once you click on this, it will take you to the secondary search and it's giving you all the 57 events. Let's try to run it for some other IP and see how many total events for that IP. Maybe this 121. If you click on event actions, all events for this, and it populates all the events for this IP. Okay, so this is how you can create the workflow actions. And I mean, it comes very handy when someone, uh, basically someone who is not much familiar with how to write Splunk search queries. So someone coming from the non-tech background or someone in your business team, this feature comes very handy. You can just set up the distinct workflow actions based on the requirement, and they can just go to the event actions and then execute that workflow action. So you see that workflow actions here, as well as if you go against field, you will see that more details about all events for this test workflow action, because we have configured to display it against field as well as in event actions. So yeah, that's how you can set up the workflow actions. And yeah, I think that's it for this session. Thanks.